So if you go down 95 and you go through Northern Virginia, you deal with that absolutely atrocious stretch of road between Springfield and Fredericksburg, and you get down south of Richmond, just on the other side of Petersburg. You can turn and take I-84 as it kind of goes southwest into Dinwiddie County, Virginia. It's in the Piedmont. And if you know anything about the region of the mid-Atlantic, we basically have three different geographies. Right along the coast, you have the tidewater, that kind of sandy, loose soil that goes all the way to the ocean. You have the region we live in here, the Piedmont, this kind of rocky, hilly, slopey region. And then you have the mountains, the Alleghenies on the far end, and the Appalachian, the Blue Ridge kind of here in the middle. But this geography plays a vital and important role in the history of our church tradition as Episcopalians and in the history of the earliest European settlement of our country. But down in Dinwiddie County, when you get off I-84 and you kind of take some back roads, you can come across Sapponey Church, Sapponey Parish, which was a wood-frame church built between 1725 and 1726 that still stands to this day. Part of that is absolutely mind-blowing to me. But it is the resting place of the Reverend Devereux Jarrett and his wife. And Reverend Devereux Jarrett was a prominent and important figure in the life of the Church of England in Virginia prior to the Revolution, and then in the years after the Revolution, as we established our own identity as Episcopalians. Jarrett was a proponent and significant supporter of the First Great Awakening, and specifically the Methodist renewal within the Church of England that was being promulgated by John Wesley. And he felt very strongly that this gave a vitality and life, a life of new energy to the church in Virginia, which by that point was sort of recognized as a staid and rather solemn affair. It was the church of the powerful elite right on the coast. It was not only the church of the elite, but it was quite literally the political power center. The vestries of churches would be the agents of the state in each of their parish boundaries. And he broke through all of that with a sense of renewed and new life in the evangelical awakening that was offered through the spirit of this new age of new religious vitality. But in 1784, things collapsed. Jarrett, for so long, this strong, ardent supporter of Methodism, had promised all of his co-religionists, all of his fellow Episcopalians, that they had nothing to worry about. That this vital and new way of experiencing God was not a threat to the church, but a deepening of its commitments and convictions. It was not there to undermine the power of the church, but instead to renew it and make it ever stronger for its mission and ministry in the world around it. But John Wesley, in 1784, ordained a set of elders for the American context in the years immediately after the Revolution. And in so doing, created a fundamental rupture with the newly established Episcopal Church, and created essentially a new denomination that would become Methodism in the United States. And Jarrett, by that point an old man, sort of retired in his ministry. He kept moving forward, but he was so disheartened, so devastated by this promise not kept, by the years that he had dedicated to showing the beauty and the vitality of this faith, only for it to seemingly have been ruptured. And I want to invite us this morning to spend a few minutes kind of reflecting on that, because I think there are, in some ways, some parallels for us. What we experience in our service today, the language and the kind of structure of this traditional form of our prayer book, kind of has a staid and solemn character to it. It can feel a kind of cold, unapproachable faith. It doesn't have a vitality about it. It doesn't have a spirit of new life and transformation about it. But I also think that there's a sense in connecting this weekend with the observances we have around the 250th anniversary of our country, some sense in which this is true for some of us, maybe even many of us, of the ways in which we are experiencing this moment in our life as citizens of this country. That the promises, the foundational beliefs, the things that we held so vitally true about who we are and who we believed ourselves to be, seemingly have been undermined, have been ruptured, have been torn away. You know, we hear this beautiful passage from Jesus at the end of our passage from St. Matthew's Gospel today. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. And I couldn't help this weekend, as I prepared for this service, but think of that incredible poem etched on the side of the Statue of Liberty, Emma Lazarus's 1883 poem, The New Colossus, and that most famous second stanza, keep ancient these lands, you storied pomp, cries she with silent lips, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. The promise of what we claim to be. The promise of a place of respite, of new life, of transformed life, of opportunity for goodness and joy and safety. And I suspect many of us in this moment wonder how true that is of us today. How accurate of a picture that is for who we claim to be as a people. So many I know have wrestled with how and whether even to celebrate this weekend and how to mark this occasion, considering all of the difficulties and challenges and pains that we are experiencing as a society and nation today. And yet I think we have a forerunner in the example of Devereux Jarrett, one who even in a great rupture in his life, nevertheless maintained fealty and commitment to the principles of his faith, to the principles of this way of living transformed lives in the spirit of new life in God. We have a ministry, even as we were this sort of state apparatus in our historical context, as I talked about at the beginning of the service. We have a ministry now of truth-telling, of justice-seeking, of, as it talks about in the Catechism, respecting the dignity of every human being and being ministers of that truth to a world so desperate to hear it. And I think in this moment, both as people of faith and as people and citizens of a country that has the best of ideals in its DNA, we have an invitation once more to recommit ourselves to those ideals, to be reminded of them anew, to even in this moment of darkness, rest in the assurance of better days ahead. But to recognize too, as so often Jesus reminds us through his gospel ministry, that we have a call and a mission to embrace and live out those principles, to not just be the proclaimers of this good news, but to embody it in an enfleshed way, to be committed to these principles in our very lives. A politician, remarking on the 250th anniversary of our country, said this a couple of days ago. What a privilege each of us has to live in a nation that every one of its inhabitants can shape. What a responsibility each of us possesses to prove ourselves worthy of all those who came before. What power each of us holds to bring America ever closer to the greatness so many have seen when they looked upon these shores. The greatness that for 250 years has been America. That was Zoran Mamdani, the mayor of New York City. And by right, in his lived experience and the experience of his people, he has many valid reasons for looking askance at the promises that we have made as a country to refugees and to others who have sought new life here. And yet, he doesn't take the tact of criticism. He doesn't take the tact of rejecting who we are as a country, abandoning it altogether. But he invites us to embrace it anew, to embrace the best of who we can be, and to remind us that to embrace that call is to take up our own responsibility to make this country the best that we can make it. And coming back again to the fundamental point that we are a people of faith, to take St. Paul's words elsewhere, that we are a people set apart. We too have a moment and an opportunity to remember our call to be transforming agents in this world around us, to proclaim the goodness and dignity of every human being, and to work for the justice and peace of every people and every place in the world around us. So this week, as we celebrate this Sunday, but as we also reflect on who we are as a people, celebrating the 250 years that we have gathered together under this flag, under this identity of being citizens of the United States of America, may we feel the whole of this call anew to champion the best of who we are and to be the people of compassion, love, and grace that we most ideally can be and should be, now and always. Amen.